When you finally walked away, they thought it was funny. They assumed you'd crawl back within a week, begging to be let back into their toxic little ecosystem. But what they never accounted for in their smug little calculations was the aftermath of your absence. You didn't just leave, you took everything with you, the energy, the spark, the foundation they were standing on. It all went with you. Now they're stumbling through empty rooms, watching their world collapse, wondering why nothing feels stable anymore. Let me paint the scene they'll never admit to seeing. When you turned your back and walked away, it wasn't just an exit. It was detonation. You'd been holding the pin on a grenade for years, and when you finally dropped it, the explosion wasn't instant. It unfolded slowly, beautifully, and devastatingly as they watched their entire illusion unravel thread by thread. Because they never realized, not until it was far too late, that you weren't just part of their story. You were the story. They treated you like furniture, something to lean on when convenient, something to ignore when uninteresting, something to kick when frustrated. But furniture doesn't have a heartbeat. It doesn't remember, it doesn't keep receipts. You did. You kept every single one, categorized in your mind and spirit, waiting for the right moment to cash them all in at once. And when that moment came, when you finally said those two legendary words, "Bye, Lowell," the entire economy of their ego went bankrupt. Their confidence, their control, their illusion of superiority, gone. What they never understood was that some people aren't just players in the game. Some people are the game itself. When those people leave, they don't just remove their pieces from the board. They take the board, the rules, and even the concept of winning. What's left is nothing but lost players staring into empty space, realizing their moves no longer matter. When you left, you didn't just walk away. You dismantled an entire ecosystem. You erased the blueprint that held their identity together. It was the architecture of absence, a void so precise and intentional it made black holes look clumsy. You didn't just subtract yourself from their equation, you deleted the entire formula. And now they're left trying to solve for X when X was you. Every single thing they took for granted, their confidence, their balance, their social standing, was built on your presence, your consistency, your light. They got so comfortable standing on your shoulders that they forgot what it felt like to stand on their own 2 feet. Now they're free, falling through a reality that used to make sense, realizing you weren't holding them back, you were holding them up. That's the difference between flying and crashing, and you can feel it in the silence that followed your exit. The quiet meetings, the dead group chats, the shift from electricity to static. Because you weren't just adding to the vibe. You were the current that made it all alive. You were the power source they all plugged into while pretending to be self-sufficient little solar panels. But solar panels don't work in darkness, and that's exactly what you left behind. A darkness so thick they can't even see each other anymore. Just shadows bumping into shadows, wondering where all the light went. Now they're scrambling, desperate to replace you, bringing in new people, new energy, new dynamics. But it's like trying to replace the sun with a flashlight. Sure, there's a flicker of light, but it doesn't warm anything. It doesn't grow anything. It doesn't create life. It only reminds them what true illumination felt like when you were there, turning their mediocrity into something that almost looked like excellence from a distance. And distance is all they have now. An infinite, unbearable gap between what was and what will never be again. Because when you left, you didn't just walk out. You took everything that held their false empire together. It wasn't just your body or your effort. It was the entire invisible infrastructure you'd been maintaining while they were busy playing their petty power games. You took the emotional labor, the intellectual property, the creative current, the spiritual frequency that kept their operation breathing. They never noticed how much you carried until the lights went out and suddenly no one knew where the switch was. You were the translator, the one who made dysfunction appear functional, who turned chaos into coherence. You made their cruelty look like tough love, their neglect seem like independence, their abuse masquerade as strength. But when you left, You took the dictionary with you. And now they're speaking in tongues, babbling confusion. Because without you to decode their damage, they're just noise pollution with legs. The cracks started showing fast. Connections broke. The relationships you secretly maintained for them fell apart. The bridges you rebuilt every time they burned one down are gone for good. Their reputation, the one you guarded with your presence, collapsed because people only tolerated them to stay connected to you. Now they're standing in an empty room, realizing it was never filled with friends, just spectators who came for the show you were producing. They look back on their achievements, their accomplishments, their so-called highlights, and finally see your fingerprints all over them. Every victory they boasted about carried your DNA. Every success story they told had you edited out of the credits. But you can't erase the foundation and expect the building to stand. You can't Photoshop out the skeleton and pretend it still walks. You can't delete oxygen and act like you're still breathing. That's what they're doing now, suffocating on their own revision of history. Because what they never understood is that while they were busy playing checkers, you were playing chess. And even beyond that, they were playing a game while you were building an empire. And when you finally walked away, it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. You didn't forfeit. You ascended. You didn't just walk away. You took the entire casino with you. Because the house only wins when the house exists, and you were the house. You were the walls, the ceiling, the foundation, and everything in between. They laughed when you said you were done, didn't they? That smug little chuckle dripping with arrogance. You'll be back. You always come back. But this time was different. This time you'd already designed your escape route while they were still planning their next move in a game that was already over. They were strategizing inside a cage you'd already set on fire. While they obsessed over winning battles, you had already won the war by refusing to fight it anymore. The scoreboard doesn't matter when there's no arena. The rules don't matter when there's no referee. The players don't matter when there's no game. And that's exactly what you took with you. The entire construct that gave their actions meaning, context, and purpose. Now they're just pantomiming purpose, shadow boxing with ghosts, playing cards with phantoms, running races with no finish line, because you were all those things and more. Watch them now. Watch them try to restart the game without you, shuffling pieces around like something's happening. Watch them celebrate fake wins, hand out hollow crowns, pretending the illusion still works. It's all theater now, a world of make-believe where grown bodies act like children still waiting for the curtain to rise. But the stage collapsed the moment you stepped off it. They just can't admit the show's over. Because right now, while you're living your life in peace, they're in emergency meetings about your absence. Desperate strategy sessions about how to fill the void. Crisis management teams trying to stop the bleeding. But what you left behind wasn't a paper cut. It was a full-scale hemorrhage. And you can't patch a severed artery with PR statements and denial. Everything is falling apart. The projects that used to thrive are crumbling. The plans that once seemed airtight are unraveling. The momentum, gone. Because you weren't just a participant, you were the catalyst. You were the enzyme that turned stagnation into synergy. Without you, they're just raw materials. Disconnected, unreactive, and unimpressive. They only looked brilliant when you arranged them into something that made sense. They're realizing now, far too late, that you weren't an accessory. You were load-bearing. Removing you wasn't like redecorating a room. It was like pulling out the main support beam. And now the ceiling's cracking, the walls are bending, the foundation's shifting. They're scrambling to patch it up, but you can't fix structural collapse with emotional duct tape. You can't repair a fractured core with surface-level fixes. Every day without you is another degree of decline, another percentage of deterioration, another reminder of how much they depended on what they never respected. And even if they finally understood it now, it wouldn't matter. Because you can't apologize to absence. You can't make peace with silence. You can't negotiate with someone who's already gone and meant it when they said that final word. That one syllable that sounded like laughter but hit like thunder. Bye. Let's talk about the economics of what really happened when you walked away. You didn't just leave. You triggered the biggest market crash of their lives. You collapsed an entire economy that ran on one currency, your energy. They'd been spending it recklessly, like spoiled trust fund babies who never understood that wealth can run out. They never realized your energy was the gold standard backing their entire existence. You were the one paying for their confidence with your encouragement, financing their success with your support, and funding their image with your presence. And because they were overdrawing on your emotional account every day, they never learned how to generate anything of real value themselves. Now the bill has come due, and their account is empty. Overdraft notices everywhere. The bankruptcy isn't just financial. It's spiritual, emotional, existential. They're waking up to the horrifying truth that everything they thought they owned was actually leased from you. Their personality was borrowed. Their strength was subsidized. Their creativity was commissioned. And now that you've closed the bank, they're left with nothing but debt and dust. Watch them now scrambling to rebuild their portfolio without you, trying to invest in new relationships with nothing to offer, trying to leverage assets that never actually belong to them. But you can't mortgage an ego that's already in foreclosure. You can't refinance a personality that was never truly yours. You can't file for bankruptcy on a debt that extends into the very architecture of your soul. They owe you everything, and yet they'll get nothing. And here's the part that stings them most. You're not even watching. You're not tracking their downfall through mutual friends. You're not checking their socials for updates. You've moved so far beyond the wreckage that their collapse doesn't even register as background noise. Your world is too full, too alive, too rich in new color to waste time glancing in the rearview mirror. That's what keeps them up at 3 a.m. Not the guilt, not the regret, but the cold, suffocating realization that you're not thinking about them at all. Your revenge wasn't calculated or cruel. It was cosmic. It wasn't planned or plotted. It was physics. The universe simply rebalanced itself the moment you removed your energy from their system. You didn't curse them. You just left. And gravity did the rest. You see, when something has no foundation, it collapses on its own. Now they keep checking, hoping to see you struggling without them, searching for some sign that you're suffering, that you miss them, that they mattered enough to haunt you. But all they see is you glowing, thriving, blooming in ways they never allowed you to before. And that's the most brutal part. You're not trying to hurt them with your happiness. You're not trying to punish them with your peace or destroy them with your success. You're just living, purely, freely, unapologetically living. And that's the cruelty they can't escape. That your best revenge is simply existing beautifully without them. Every day you spend not thinking about them is another day they spend thinking about nothing else but you. Haunted, tormented by the ghost of what could have been if they had just treated you right, if they had just recognized what they had before it was gone. But they didn't. They chose arrogance over awareness, manipulation over maturity, ego over empathy. And now every blessing you receive is a reminder of what they threw away, what they can never reclaim, because you don't give second chances to people who wasted the first 1,000. And the cruelest irony of all? They know this. That's why they can't sleep. That's why the silence feels so loud. Because deep down, they understand. No one destroyed them but themselves. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton wrote it about physics, but you lived it through experience. They pushed you for years, poked at your boundaries, chipped away at your patience, and fed on your silence. They kept pressing, convinced you'd never push back, never leave, never stop showing up to save them from the chaos they created. What they didn't understand was that every shove they gave you was building pressure behind the dam of your restraint. And when you finally walked away, you didn't just leave. You exploded forward with the full force of all those years of suppressed energy. That release didn't destroy you. It launched you. You were propelled by pure momentum, the kind that comes from exhaustion transformed into power, pain converted into propulsion. And while that same momentum carried you straight into a better, freer life, it left them trapped in the void you used to fill, a vacuum that devours everything they try to replace you with. Now they're rewriting history, aren't they? Rehearsing their victim monologue, trying to convince themselves and anyone gullible enough to listen that you were the problem. You were too much, they say, too emotional, too unpredictable, too demanding. They throw these labels around like shields, hoping the noise will drown out the truth echoing in their own minds, that you were never the problem. You were the glue, the solution, the stability that held their dysfunction together long enough for them to pretend it wasn't there. And now that you're gone, all the problems you used to quietly manage are surfacing one by one, like bodies rising in a drained lake. Ugly truths that can't stay hidden anymore. They're watching the water recede, exposing the things they buried. Their insecurity, their manipulation, their weakness, all the things you absorbed, softened, and covered with love. Your absence has become their presence. The void you left has grown louder than any argument, heavier than any silence. It's everywhere. It's in the conversations that trail off. It's in the laughter that doesn't quite land. It's in the way the room feels colder, emptier, less alive. The space where you used to be now takes up more emotional real estate than your body ever did. When you were there, they could take you for granted. But now that you're gone, they can't take anything for granted. Not comfort, not joy, not peace. All they have left is the echo of your energy, the memory of your presence, and the unbearable awareness of how much nothing weighs when it replaces everything. That paradox, that endless loop of loss, is what's driving them slowly, beautifully, inevitably insane. Now let's talk about the building you took when you left, because it wasn't symbolic, it was literal in the metaphysical sense. You didn't just exit their life, you dismantled the architecture of their entire world. The structure they mistook for strength was really scaffolding made of your patience. You were the beams, the walls, the foundation, the roof, the invisible engineering that held their chaos upright. Their sense of stability wasn't built from their own resilience, it was built from yours. When you removed yourself, you didn't just leave a U-shaped hole. You revealed that the structure never existed at all. It was cardboard dressed as concrete. And when you stopped pretending it was real, it folded under its own falseness. Every floor of that building was something you provided. The foundation was your consistency, the part of you that always showed up no matter how drained you were. The frame was your strength, the quiet kind that absorbed storms without asking for applause. The walls were your boundaries, the lines they kept testing, crossing, and breaking, yet secretly relied on for a sense of direction. When you walked away, you didn't swing a wrecking ball. You simply stepped back, and reality collapsed under its own weight. Because illusion can't survive without someone willing to believe in it. And you stopped believing. You stopped investing in the lie that they were capable of holding their own structure. Now they're trying to rebuild. Oh, they're scrambling, patching holes with new faces, painting over cracks with new relationships, recruiting new energy like desperate landlords trying to fill empty units. But here's the thing. You can't rebuild something that never existed. You can't renovate a mirage. You can't repair what was never real. All they're doing is hammering drywall into smoke and wondering why it won't hold. They're discovering piece by piece that everything they thought was solid was actually just your willingness to keep pretending. You were the one maintaining the illusion, feeding it oxygen, holding it up with invisible strength. And now that willingness, that grace, is gone. And with it, everything else has vanished. The address they used to give people to find them no longer exists. The coordinates now lead to an empty lot. The map says there's a building there, but there's nothing but dust and silence. Because that something they once showed off, the image, the confidence, the presence, was you. You were the illusion of substance in their hollow world. And now, without you, they're standing in the wreckage wondering how they missed it, how they failed to notice that the foundation had no permit, no plan, no structure, that it was all you. You were the architecture, the engineer, and the electricity keeping their false empire alive. But your willpower, your brilliance, your soul, it's elsewhere now. You're not patching illusions anymore. You're constructing truth. You're building real things with real people in real places. You've traded simulations for substance. You're creating connections rooted in mutual respect, not dependency. You've stepped into a world where your energy builds instead of sustains, where your presence is a gift, not a resource to be mined, and they'll never be invited there. That soft, almost playful bye you left them with wasn't just closure, it was an execution. It was the death of their delusion, delivered with a smile. It wasn't a goodbye filled with bitterness or rage. It was the sound of peace, of freedom disguised as laughter. Because you weren't angry anymore, you weren't broken anymore, you weren't anything they could use anymore. You had transcended the game. That final laugh wasn't mockery, it was liberation. It was amusement at how long you stayed, how deeply you tried, how seriously they took a game you'd already stopped playing. And that's the ultimate irony. They're still playing, still competing, still pretending there's a scoreboard. Meanwhile, you've walked off the field, taken the lights, the audience, and the entire arena with you. You don't need them to lose for you to win. You already did. The moment you realized you were never supposed to fight for a place in their illusion. You were meant to build your own kingdom, and now you are. You were amused, not bitter, not broken, not trying to prove a point, just amused. That's what unsettles them most. The kind of laughter that isn't angry or forced, but clean, effortless, and free. You weren't laughing at them, you were laughing through them, through the illusion, through the performance, through the entire sad little stage play they mistook for power. You were amused at how much control they thought they had over someone who had already transcended their entire reality. They believed they were the puppet masters, tugging invisible strings, manipulating your emotions, shaping your reactions, never realizing that you had already stepped off the stage, cut the strings, and burned the theater down on your way out. They thought you were trapped in their orbit, but you had already left the solar system. They thought they were your sun, the center of your attention, the source of your warmth. But in truth, they were just flickering candles, burning themselves out, while you became the whole sky. And when you laughed your way out the door, that laugh didn't just echo, it erased. It stripped everything they'd built of meaning. It turned their schemes, their words, their self-importance into something laughably small. Everything they'd ever done, the manipulation, the lies, the drama, it all collapsed into a single predictable punchline, and not even a clever one. No, it was the kind of joke you've heard 1,000 times. Boring, over-rehearsed, desperate for attention. The kind of joke that makes people uncomfortable, not because it's offensive, but because it's so transparently trying to be something it's not. That's what they became. A tragic comedy, minus the comedy. A performance nobody's watching anymore. The irony is brutal. They used to think they were your greatest tormentors, but now they're their own entertainment, trapped in an endless rerun of a show that only they find funny. The sound of your laughter, that moment of pure freedom, still haunts them. They can't unhear it. It reverberates in their memory like a living echo, bouncing off the walls of their new emptiness. Because it wasn't bitter laughter. It wasn't the kind that comes from revenge, it was genuine amusement. The sound of someone who finally got the joke. You see, the real punchline was this. They thought they were playing you, but the only person you were playing was yourself. by staying in their circus for as long as you did. Once you realized that, once the humor of it hit you like a revelation, you couldn't stop laughing, all the way to your new life, where the air is lighter and the silence finally feels like peace instead of punishment. The moment you laughed, really laughed, was the moment the balance of power shifted forever. That laugh became a monument, frozen in time, marking the precise second when their cruelty turned into comedy, when their power became parody. The energy of it cracked the illusion wide open. Suddenly, everything they'd built, all their posturing, all their fake dominance, all their carefully constructed facades, looked ridiculous. You could finally see them for what they were. Children playing with broken toys, pretending they were weapons. And that's when everything changed. Because you realize something they never will, that real power doesn't need to fight back. Real power doesn't argue, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. It simply walks away and lets time handle the rest. You stopped engaging, and that's when they lost everything. Because you can't win a game when the other player refuses to play, and you didn't just quit the game. You deleted the board. You erased the rules. You took the audience, the meaning, the thrill, and left them alone with their imaginary victories. Your absence became the loudest thing in their world. When you were there, they could talk over you, gaslight you, drown you out. But now that you're gone, the silence is deafening, and not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that hums like static, full of reminders of everything they've lost. It's not an empty silence. It's a pregnant one, swollen with everything you're no longer saying, everything you're no longer doing, everything you're no longer giving. That silence isn't void. It's volume. It's energy turned inside out, and it surrounds them like an invisible storm. They can feel it, in the pauses of conversations that used to flow, in the hollow laughter that sounds rehearsed, in the sudden awkwardness when someone mentions your name. They feel you in the gaps between sentences, in the unfinished thoughts, in the words they don't say out loud. You've become the negative space that gives shape to everything else. You're the contrast that defines their dull gray existence. They can't see you, but they can't stop seeing you. They can't hear you, but they can't stop hearing you. You've become everywhere and nowhere, a ghost made of clarity. And here's what terrifies them most. Your absence cannot be controlled. It doesn't respond to manipulation. It doesn't react to guilt. It doesn't flinch under cruelty or soften at apology. It's absolute. It's pure consequence, stripped of emotion, immune to their old tricks. You've become the mirror they can't escape, the reflection that shows them everything they tried to hide from, and they can't charm it, can't argue with it, can't destroy it. Because you're not in their world anymore. You've become the space around it. Now, every conversation they have carries your silence like a third voice. Every interaction feels haunted by what's missing. Every plan they make feels flat without your energy breathing life into it. You were the depth in their shallow world, the rhythm in their noise, the meaning in their mess. And now they're just echoes shouting into a void that doesn't echo back. Their words bounce off nothing. Their actions feel weightless. Their existence feels small, thin, transparent. Because the void you left behind isn't passive. It's alive, intelligent, active. It's the gravity they can't escape and the shadow they can't outrun. It's a constant reminder that they were never as big, as powerful, or as necessary as they thought. You were the meaning behind their motion, the reason behind their relevance. Without you, everything feels inverted. Sound without tone, motion without purpose, life without heartbeat. They keep trying to fill the space with noise, distraction, substitutes, but nothing sticks. Because you can't replace presence with performance. You can't rebuild authenticity with pretense. And so the silence continues, heavy, infinite, merciless. It wraps around them like consequence incarnate, whispering the truth they never wanted to face. that they weren't the story. You were. And that laugh, that final, effortless, divine laugh, was the closing line of a chapter they'll keep rereading, trying to make sense of what they lost, never realizing the joke was never on you. The joke was them. It's not passive, it's not quiet, it's not gone. Your absence is active, alive, breathing, expanding. It's working on them in ways that no conversation, no confrontation, no revenge ever could. It's not an ending. It's an evolution. It's growing like a black hole that started small, invisible at first, just a tiny tear in the fabric of their comfort. But it didn't stay small. It expanded. It deepened. It became gravitational. Now it's pulling everything they built, everything they depended on, everything they pretended was stable into its orbit, consuming it all. What used to be their certainty is now their chaos. What used to be their security is now their storm. And at the center of that storm is nothing. You, or rather, the absence of you. They're fighting it, of course, they always do. They're scrambling, flailing, trying to hold on to something that no longer exists. But how do you fight nothing? How do you swing at air? You can't defeat absence. You can't negotiate with the void. You can't manipulate silence. You can only watch as it slowly, mercilessly strips away every illusion you built around yourself. And that's what's happening now. Your absence is peeling back the layers of their delusion like wallpaper coming loose in a house that's been abandoned too long. Every day reveals another truth they tried to bury. Every moment shows them something they wish they hadn't seen. Because absence doesn't just take, it exposes, it reveals what was never real. And that's the hardest part for them to face, realizing that everything they thought was theirs was only borrowed from you. They thought they had stability, but you were the foundation. They thought they had direction, but you were the compass. They thought they had purpose, but you were the reason. They thought they had light, but you were the flame. They thought they had meaning, but you were the story. You were the translator who made their chaos sound like coherence. You were the defender who made their weakness look like courage. You were the creator who made their lives seem full. You were the sustainer who kept everything alive. And when you left, you took it all with you, because all of it was you. The foundation, the structure, the light, the warmth. Every piece of stability they thought they'd built was you lending them your power. And when you finally reclaimed what was yours, the whole thing collapsed into the truth. There was never a them without you. There was only the reflection of your energy bouncing off their emptiness. Now they're left with motion that has no meaning, sound that has no music, life that has no pulse. They're dancing to silence, singing without melody, performing for an audience that left with you. Because you weren't just part of the show. You were the entire production, the script, the stage, the lighting, the soundtrack. And when you walked away, the music stopped, the lights went out, the applause faded. They were left in darkness, blinking, confused, unable to accept that the show is over. They thought they were the stars, but now they realize they were extras in a story that no longer exists. They played themselves by playing with you. They gambled with something they never understood. Your energy, your time, your attention, thinking you were another player in their small, predictable game. But you weren't even at the table anymore. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to buy me a coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlightened Wisdom.